York Times. New York Times, who doesn't care about Native people, somehow was interested in this topic. Previously, very recently did something on Dakota Access Pipeline, so maybe that's not completely fair, but largely has been indifferent to Native affairs. It seems like this storyline is picking up steam, for better and for worse. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I have some hope that it's for better. I mean, there's a number of things that have happened just this year that suggest maybe we're starting to reach the tipping point of some reversal in this trend. So yeah, the New York Times magazine story that was published on a Sunday, it was inspired, if you would, by the plight of the Nooksack 306, but it really was a treatment of disenrollment and its epidemic nationwide. And it's an article that reached the entire world. I mean, when the New York Times runs a magazine story of several thousand words on a Sunday, you're going to reach an audience. And I can tell you, I've had filmmakers call me since then, other reporters call me since then. It really has, I think, galvanized international and national and certainly intertribal attention to the issue like never before. Then you see news like Robinson, which again is historic in that they brought everybody back home.
Right. That's beautiful.
And
that really is a beautiful thing.
I mean, it made me feel really, really good. And it's not just Robinson. I've already alluded to Grayton. There's a chairman at Coyote Valley, Michael Hunter.
Isn't Grand Ronde doing stuff too?
Grand Ronde is sideways.
Thank you for that clarification.
So please don't bring them up again. But in Northern California, you've got Grayton, you've got Robinson, you've got Michael Hunter down at Coyote Valley that wants to do the same thing to his people. Before he was chairman, a bunch of people were exiled. He wants to bring them home. You have guys like Reno Franklin over at Kashaya that's saying disenrollment's not our way either, and they have some code provisions that suggest that. So I'm really proud of my relatives in Northern California because California has been the epicenter of this ugliness. Largely Southern California because of the gaming dollars. But really, it's been up and down California Indian country, at least in the north, in Pomo country. These leaders and these tribes are starting to reverse this trend, and that enthuses me greatly.
Yeah. I hope that this is similar to the Dakota Access Pipeline work when everybody got very enthused and it was, a lot of zeal regarding it and energy. I think there still has to be a requirement, or there should be, and this is my thought on it, that it be for the right reasons. I don't know if there's value in it to the degree that it's just doing it to do it. Because there's still those underlying existential things, right? And those underlying existential things still what makes you Native? What makes you Indigenous? Those things still, if they're still unaddressed, what makes you a community member? And you're just saying, well, we're going to, either include or exclude everybody. That's still not getting to the fundamental crux of that question. And I think that those places, any one of those places, I'm glad that they're doing something about it, but I think they have to ultimately, question, well, what does it mean actually to be a member of this community? And if not, they're just kicking the can further down the road, right? I mean, that's largely the case, especially when you're talking a blood quantum regime. Like, we're just going to kick the can down the road and we're going to address it in 2 generations, and it's really not going anyplace. And so I think that it sounds cool that they're doing something about it, but to what end?
And I don't know what's happening in those communities. I just have hope that they're reversing really assimilation and genocide is what they're reversing. And I have a pretty cynical look on our ability to actually do that as Indigenous peoples 200 years into this federal Indian experiment. I'm not sure we're going to pull out of this, to be quite honest, and be able to answer those existential questions in a good way and in a way that's going to sustain us forever. But I sure see signs of hope in places like Robinson and Grayton and Kashaya and Coyote Valley, and I hope that hope starts to extend throughout Indian country and overcome the ugliness that we're seeing in disenrollment.
I'm curious to all three of you, what do you think is the Indigenous way to resolve and repair this issue? Because if we get the United States government involved, then we are accepting their Eurocentric value system. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on how we can resolve this, because there's hurt feelings that are going to go on for generations, especially like Nooksack. So what do we do as Indigenous people in a good way?
Well, I don't think it's our responsibility. I mean, I truly believe in the sovereign authority of a community to be able to self-determine. And if a rancheria like Robinson takes the initiative, I don't, and this is actually one of the critiques that, Gabe and we're not going to rehash that, but I think that, this, the particular jurisprudential stance of this invites federal intervention. And I think that's a big step backwards. And I think that that's a very dangerous thing. And I think it's particularly problematic for Native attorneys to do that, to be completely honest with you. I think the solutions, any one of our solutions, I'm a big proponent of local organizing. And I think our answers come from home. And to the degree that we look outside for those solutions, especially to some white person in a courtroom or especially to some white people in Washington, D.C., that's a problem. If I'm looking at Nooksack, for example, and I know they have certain structural issues because, they just, Gabe gets kicked out of court every 2 weeks. I'm not making light of it because I know that's a real thing, Gabe, and I know that there's legitimacy problems regarding even the council. I have a good friend of mine, Carmen, and she wouldn't mind me saying her name. We talked about her publicly before. She's my sister. That there's, she's prevented from doing her job. She can't even do her job because the corruption is so crazy there. And so my problem is on a procedural level. That's getting back to what we talked. Like, I have procedural problems with it. I don't know the substantive answers, but I know procedurally, maybe they need a little bit of direction there. But to the degree that we look for an outside source, and I can say this, I think, about any community, Native or not, for the answers to our problems, I think we're going to continue to dig ourselves in that rut, and I get less hopeful when I see that. When I see something like Robinson, man, I'm overjoyed. Not because they came to the right answer, but because they came to that answer. Does that make sense?
No, and I don't disagree. That's what gives me so much hope is there was some indigenous ability or capacity to reverse that.
Right.
But as I said on the prior show, my worry is based on 200 years of federal Indian law and policy designed to exterminate us. In many communities, that indigenous capacity has been ruined by the United States.
Right.
And I'm not looking for the United States to come in every single time like the cavalry and solve the problem. I'm looking to the United States to create some form of deterrent before it happens again.
Okay.
And if you can upend your tribal court and disbar the opposing lawyer and create your new Supreme Court and then not have an election,
that's a problem.
There's no hope for the tribe. And I suggest there the indigenous capacity to find solutions has been destroyed. In that instance, I am looking to the United States government. You have Interior now taking action to threaten certain funds in hope of just all Larry Roberts was trying to do is make them have an election. And they were willing to throw away $14 million at Nooksack in federal money to refuse to have that election. I don't think that was an unreasonable position by the United States.
No, I don't think so either. But I think that the consequence, follow me on this real quickly. If the impact of saying that a few people, and this is not to diminish that plight, because once again, I don't know the substance of those particular claims, but if the impact of saying that those people, they're not receiving services, because that's a lot of what it is that everybody's not going to receive those services. I don't see how that's a solution. I don't see how that's wisdom, that now we just magnify that problem by a couple hundredfold. You see what I'm saying?
No, I do understand that, but what else is going to happen?
That's a fair question. I don't know.
And so, I appreciated, and I wrote an article on this, in 2008, at the beginning of the Obama administration, they got out of it. They got out of the disenrollment business, and Interior had been in the disenrollment business forever, for decades, since the IRA was passed. They got out. I think they overcorrected. It encouraged, through lack of a deterrent, a lot of tribes to do this to their people. And I was heartened to see that before Obama left office, the last 90 to 120 days of his office, they did something, at least at Nooksack. I saw signs they did some things some other places to deter this from continuing to happen. I think they realized it was a bit of an overcorrection as the trustee to not do anything. they did something, and time will tell whether freezing $14 million in funds deterred this from happening further. We'll find out.
Yeah.
But I'm just happy that they did something. And to be clear, that's what I'm looking for. Some deterrent. If a federal court judge, like we've talked about, might look at it, it'll deter the next Bob Kelly from doing this. Trust me. If the United States might suspend funds, tens of millions of dollars, it might deter the next Bob Kelly from doing this. Kevin Washburn has written an article that you commented on online suggesting that perhaps the extreme is to have a tribe lose its federal recognition.
You know, it's obviously a huge step backwards.
And I saw your comment, but maybe, just maybe, that would deter the next Bob Kelly from doing it. I'm not suggesting any one of these mechanisms is exactly the correct one.
But I just want to be clear that I'm suggesting that Kevin Washburn is suggesting is completely not the right mechanism.
No, I understand your position, but to me, it's something. And if that type of rhetoric or that type of threat deters the next Bob Kelly, then I'm good with that. Not that
you're good with the termination of a tribe.
I'm not good with that, but I don't honestly think it would actually happen. I'm not sure it can legally happen.
Well, we know plenary power can happen. Once again, to go back to that thought that in exchange for a group, let's even say half the tribe being not being able to be members of, and I don't know we don't know the facts of that particular hypothetical tribe. Why, if there's legitimacy or not legitimacy to that. However, now in exchange for that, we are going to throw out the whole baby. Now we're not going to just disenroll half. We're going to disenroll, and half is obviously extreme even. But we're not going to just disenroll a few members. We're going to disenroll all the members because that's ostensibly what it's doing. That's not smart. The mathematics of that don't make sense. That we're going to take a few, and as representative of that, we're going to punish everybody.
And I don't disagree with you, but look at Nooksack. There's no tribal council.
Yes, I agree with you.
There's no tribal court. There's no general council. There's no tribal police force. There's no program, housing, healthcare, TANF that's being administered legally or non-discriminatorily. What really is left of Nooksack at this time? Have they already essentially terminated themselves?
It's a fair question.
The idea that tribe might lose its recognition, and I have to think Kevin Washburn was thinking of Nooksack. What else could he really be thinking about with that drastic of a sanction? Has it already happened, practically speaking? Maybe. Would it be that much worse if the Fed just declared it so? Sure. But practically speaking, what's left of a tribe right now? Are they really recognized anymore?
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's the sad tragedy at Nooksack is I'm not sure what's left. Mm-hmm. And when all the dust settles, if or when it settles, I'm not sure what will be left for any Nooksack, and that saddens me greatly.
Mm. No, I mean, that's a fair point. I get it. And if he was speaking specifically about Nooksack, procedurally, once again, you and I see completely eye to eye on procedurally what's going on there is 100% wrong. It's 100% wrong. And really, they're just hurt. I mean, it's stupid. It's really stupid because they don't have to. Like, you can provide process. It's a cool thing to provide process. But yeah, I mean, but he didn't specify that. And obviously, maybe he can't. I don't know, but I have a problem with the language that he used.
And you're not alone. I know some other colleagues who I won't name who could not believe that was put into writing.
Yeah, I think that's terrible. And once again, I want to be clear: it's racist. Even though it's a native person, and I don't play the identity games of like, well, he's a sellout or anything like that. I'm not qualified to say that, but that's a racist notion for anybody to proffer. We have to wrap up, man. This time always goes by so fast. I always thank you for your positions, even when I agree with you on anything. And it's not just disenrollment that we've had discussions about Nike. Remember that there's a Nike?
Oh yeah,
yeah. And but you always have incredibly well thought. You're brilliant, and I just appreciate you always pushing me. And I'm likewise hopeful when I see like Robinson. I'm with you. I want our people to do right. I just want us to do right because we figure out it's the right thing to do. And so, I'm 98% in the place with you. and I'm thankful that you're pushing this fight. I'm thankful that you're pushing this conversation, and we're trying to push this conversation likewise. Minty, you have anything?
No, I think you guys covered it.
Well, let me just thank you guys again for having the conversation. And I'll just say in closing, if we can get to the point of the 2% or your hypothetical, and that's the realm that is disenrollment, meaning we're dealing with some fraud,
Yeah.
I'll be okay with that.
Yeah.
It's the 98% that I'm trying to get rid of.
I understood and respected.
And if we end up with the 2%
Yeah.
in that situation, I'm going to be okay because we're going to be okay.
Right.